Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and welcome to our annual series of interviews of candidates for local offices. The town election is May 24th. We have contests for Select Board, Finance Committee, Planning Board, and School Committee. I am interviewing all these candidates. I have prepared questions specific to each board or committee. Each candidate will respond to the same questions for that office. This allows voters the chance to compare the candidates' approaches and thinking according to the issue. These videos will run a maximum of 25 minutes and will be available on HCAT's website, on HCAT's YouTube channel, on our Facebook page. So let's get started. Okay, so let me introduce Dan Alfred, who is on the Finance Committee and has been for 10 years and running for re-election. So Dan, we're just going to jump into these questions to make sure that we keep all of this moving along. So just give us a brief description of yourself.
Sure, yeah. So I work in finance. I invest in loans made to companies to help them make acquisitions, basically, and do that for a regional bank's balance sheet. I lived in town with my wife and two school-age children for about 11 years now. And yeah, that's the basics about me.
Oh, come on, give me a fun fact.
Fun fact, we're looking to do some major construction on our house.
Oh boy.
trying to contribute to the new growth.
That's good. We like that in the assessor's office. Anyway, so why did you choose the Finance Committee in the first place? Is it the obvious reason?
It's basically the obvious reason. I've worked in finance for 20 years, or about 20 years. When I moved to town shortly thereafter, they were looking to fill 3 vacancies on the Finance Committee. So I applied and was appointed for a year, and then have run, ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And what experience and skills? Now, obviously, you've had the experience on the board now, and nobody can take that away from you. But what do you think is the skill set that you bring to this conversation?
Well, as I said, I have 20 years in finance. I understand numbers, if you will, and in the 10 years that I've been on the Finance Committee, certainly have learned how the municipal government, municipal finance works. And my day-to-day job is to ensure that we don't take losses. So we have to be prudent in our investing. And I take that and bring that to the town and decisions that we make. I also have an MBA in investments, and I'm a chartered financial analyst designated holder. I hold the CFA designation.
All right. Okay. So I think it's the numbers game.
Few things, yeah.
Yeah. It's one office that I've never had an interest in. So.
You held the other one, though.
No, not even close. So what are the biggest funding issues, and I've limited you to 2, facing the town and therefore the Finance Committee in the next few years?
So since you limited me to 2, I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay. How can you do this?
So I think that the 2 biggest funding issues are funding our operating budget and funding our capital plan. Well, but in seriousness, because it's the Finance Committee takes requests, right? So, in essence, there are no funding challenges until requests are presented by the executive board.
Until they're all in front of you.
Until they're all in front of me. So right now, obviously, we know of tons of projects that are being discussed, right? You have DPW facility, high schools, sidewalks, water. I mean, all of the, but really, until there are decisions that are made, there's nothing before the Finance Committee anyway. But I do think that my overarching view is that the town really needs to invest in its infrastructure. And I look at it in a few different ways. It's not just infrastructure. There's 2. So in business, there's 2 different types of sort of capital spending, right? There's maintenance, which is maintaining what you have and replacing things that need to be replacing. New police, new fire engines, things like that. And then there's growth capital. And in addition to the maintenance capital, I really think we need to be investing in our town to drive future growth.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, right now we have 88% of our tax base is residential, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That puts a tremendous load on the residents and to pay all the increases in the taxes. That really has it really hinders our ability to grow our tax base and invest in the things that we need. So what I would really like to see, and what I've been sort of being a big proponent of, is ways of driving greater commercial and industrial growth, while also keeping an eye on making sure that we're growing in a way that the residents want. Right, we don't want to bring big projects that people don't want to town, because even if that brings good money, if people are unhappy, that doesn't solve the problems. And so things that I've talked about, since bringing in a downtown sewer district, right? We have a wastewater treatment plant at the Adams School that feeds the lower schools, and it's like 30 to 40% utilized. Tons of extra capacity. Last fall, there was a study that we did do to look at how the feasibility of doing it, and it was actually fairly reasonable. They estimated $2 to $2.5 million. Now that's not the total cost, because there's going to be connections and different things. So it could get a little bit bigger. There might need to be some changes at the treatment plant, but it's a fairly reasonable cost, and I think that we could do that with ARPA, the stimulus money, the capital that we already have, some free cash. We wouldn't need to raise taxes for it. And then as well, you'd have the business owners buy in through paying for at least a portion of the connection fee. And if you did that, you could really drive additional restaurants, businesses downtown. And over time, as you attract people from out of town and just more people downtown, grow foot traffic, and the great businesses that we have downtown would see a benefit from that too. Other thoughts is, if you drive down Lowland, why is it that the only thing that we can attract to Lowland is a parking lot, to the Lowland Industrial Park? Is basically a business that wants to install a parking lot.
There's a new cannabis one that's on the.
But that's an existing building. But I mean, as far as development, why is it that it's only?
Oh, you mean why is it? That's the only one.
Is the only one that wants it? Could we spend a little bit of money beautifying it a little bit? Putting in a few trees, curbing, making it a more attractive place to go. Could we potentially attract something like a brewery, who then adds a restaurant on, and then something else comes because there's traffic going downtown, and you almost build a secondary little hub.
All right, I don't want to take your time, but I'm just going to throw in infrastructure. If that's the interest, then let me tell you from history, the thing that is missing in both of them is wastewater treatment. Okay, and we can talk after
there are
this.
hurdles.
We can talk afterwards about how you can actually do that with grant money and state money and make it happen. But at any rate, okay, so the town never has enough money to pay for everything it needs, and that's never. How do you decide? How do you sit there and you weigh, okay, I know we need this, I know we need that. Right. What's your thought process?
Well, before we get to that, what we need is we really need a plan, right? Especially for the capital, because we need to have a structure by which we're going, because we have a capital plan, but we have a ton of infrastructure that different boards are looking at, right?
Sure.
So we want to have a plan in place that says, year by year. I know that we did a sidewalk study, right? And it came up with a lot of ADA non-compliant ramps and different types of, very expensive. How do we put together a plan to fund that over a number of years? How much money? What is that? What are the trade-offs by doing that? What aren't we able to do? And where are the things that need to be done and aren't done? So I want there to be a plan. But as far as when we get the actual requests, that's the tough one, right?
That's what I want to understand.
So it always amazes me. We have about an $80 million budget in Holliston, and yet every year, when it comes time for the final sort of finance committee voted recommendations to town meeting, there's maybe at most $200,000 that's being sort of tousled over. I don't want to say fought over, but debated, sort of discussed, and that's just amazing to me. And I think some of the investing in infrastructure could help. I do think there will always be, the last few dollars that people are debating. But it'd be one thing if it was like, okay, but we've already been able to spend an extra $1 million on incremental things, right? So it's a little less imperative. But if the only sort of additional stuff is that last few dollars, that's very difficult. So the things that I think about, what do I believe the taxpayers are going to be benefited by most? In general, right? I just try to sort of step back and think, what do taxpayers want? Are we adding any financial risk to the budget if we do something, right? Are we protecting the town and the taxpayers from potential future bad outcomes? For instance, are we making sure that we're doing things prudently and we're not, setting ourselves up by spending too much money too quickly, and so that if we have a recession, we're putting the budget at risk. And then, are there other ways that request can be funded and still be sustainable, right? Do I think that there are ways that the requested requested department can tighten things up a little bit inside their own budget to fund their needs? And I know public opinion is definitely important, but I think that at times, sometimes the loudest groups are not always the majority.
Oh no, very definitely.
And so certainly think about what public opinion is, but at the end it's a gut check that internally that I have based upon the considerations I've talked about, and just trying to weigh the presentations made, if there were any sort of outstanding questions that weren't answered or weren't, or we couldn't totally get an understanding of, that is basically how I go
What about
thinking
if something's a repeat over and over and over again? Does that mean anything?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, if somebody continues to ask something, it's clearly very important to them, and it factors in. But at the end of the day, if there aren't the dollars for it, and something else seems more pressing, that's why it becomes a repeat, I guess. I mean, look, it's frustrating. There are so many needs that we have in town.
Oh, sure.
I would love to be able to wave a magic wand and fund everything we need.
I know.
Because at the same time, we have a large group of people, a large population in town of people on fixed incomes, and not that they were here to talk about the assessors, but I really do appreciate the warrant article that you've put forward to try to sort of take some of that burden off of them, because that's very important. As the town goes forward, we may need an override for the high school or for different types of things. And one thing that we really want are people that have been in our town for decades, paid taxes for decades, to be able to stay in their home. And so, all of these types of things, making sure that we're not raising taxes too quickly or overburdening people, having people choose between, paying for medicine and food and taxes. That's also part of my thinking.
I just want to make sure that the residents who are viewing this don't roll their eyes and say, oh yeah, not in Holliston. From an assessor standpoint, yeah, in Holliston. Do you have people that are making choices about how they're going to feed themselves? Absolutely. How are they going to deal with their medical bills? Are they making good choices? Building up credit cards to the max and then never being able to pay them off. Yeah, that's happening here. So even though we are affluent, it doesn't mean everybody's rich.
Well, when you look at the median or the average, that's just telling you where the median or the average is. Yep. There are people, on both sides of it. And we talked with the senior center director about a lot of these things, and we hear about that, and it's not just counts of how many people are using the senior center, but how many different people they have to go out and check on, how many people can't come to the senior center, so they're delivering meals, making sure during COVID that was a huge issue too. So no, I mean we need to worry about how we drive future growth in the town, but we can't leave off the people that we could potentially be leaving behind. And again, that's why it's so important to increase our commercial and industrial growth in town, because that doesn't impact, that takes a lot of the impact off, relieves the stress.
It really does. It relieves the stress. And there have been many opportunities in the last 30 years that have not been taken. And I'm certainly hopeful that the downtown approach will take. But there's no question that is pretty much the only way out.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that there are no fairy princesses up there who are going to start dropping money.
No.
So there are
there's
limits.
So much infrastructure money right now at the federal and state government.
It's time to go.
Let's put in for everything.
Do everything. Yeah, absolutely. So let me see. We did the one about how do you decide? Okay. By the time you get it, by the time you get the budget, it has been through hand after hand after hand after hand. What are your thoughts as you're going through what's been handed to you? Do you have criteria? Does the Finance Committee have criteria as a whole about did they meet this benchmark? Is there some, literally what you need to have from us or them, whoever they are?
Yeah. Well, so at the beginning of a budget season, we work with Travis, the town administrator, on sort of setting that template, making sure that everything is in order. I will say, Travis has over-delivered with the write-ups that he presents at the beginning. It used to be we just get a sheet of paper with the numbers on it and a few little risks and other opportunities at the bottom, and that was it. We now get a long write-up describing everything. So the Finance Committee doesn't have any sort of criteria for how we look at things. I think it's more looking at what the ask is and think just does this make sense? I'm not one of those people that want to dig into every $5 in supplies that are in that budget. I mean, we want to spend our dollars prudently, but picking it over $5 in pencils is when the total budget is $50 for supplies is not part of what I'm doing. I think that over the past since Paul really left as town administrator, we went through a pretty difficult period.
Very tough time.
And we weren't getting budgets presented uniformly and even accurately necessarily, through no fault of people. If you're hired to be a department head for most of these departments, you're not hired because you can put together a budget or even know necessarily Excel, right? I mean, that's not your job. You're just trying to sort of do your job, make sure that you get that done and get it funded. Travis has brought an enormous, sort of, the criteria has been, the bar has been set much higher since he's been on it, and he's made everything a lot smoother. So there's no specific criteria, but I do want there to be a thinking behind it, especially with incremental requests, right? If you come in and you say we're maintaining everything, by and large, there's very limited questions. The one thing I am concerned about is sometimes because we have such budget constraints, right? I do think that there's a bias by some not to ask for things, and I just I want everyone to hear that. Please tell us tell us, or really tell Travis, tell your sort of authorizing board, but make sure you get out there. What do you need? What to make things better? The worst case is it's not funded, right? But if you don't ask, it's certainly not going to be funded. So, but making sure that people know what is important and what could we be doing to make our job better. I think that one of those things I think is mental health in town. I'd really like to see all the sort of the groups in town that touch the mental health issues, from the police, the youth and family services, senior center, schools, get together and come up with a sort of a whole of Holliston approach to mental health, and come up with what do we need as a town to make sure that we're sort of getting there. And now that's not a finance committee member's job, but I'm just simply saying that it would make it a lot easier when looking at different requests, because we get different requests for mental health issues from different groups in town, but each group is asking for different things, and there's no real holistic picture.
Right, but they do different things in some cases.
Some cases, but if you had an overarching sort of working group, it may be that we could find different and unique ways of solving some problems that we're at least prioritizing and coming up as a team with what is the most pressing of all the asks to make it. Because I'm not a mental health professional.
Right.
So if I see different mental health asks, I can't necessarily do that. But if we have the professionals come in and say, this is what the town needs to address the crisis, and we need it in this order, it makes certainly the finance committee's job much easier. But also, I think it creates a better outcome for the town because you're having the professionals decide.
I need to move you along so you can end up with your time.
We can talk about this forever.
Okay. Are there any changes that you would recommend to making in the way in which government operates? And I'm talking processes and, information sharing and all organization. And
so, we had the big debate over Article 9, the Governance Committee's article last year. And honestly, most of what they were asking for is basically being done because of Travis's competence and just his interest in it. I mean, the 126-page town administrator recommended budget.
I'm glad you have it.
It's well thumbed.
Yeah.
I recommend everyone read it. Probably as a bedtime reading.
We actually are putting it as a link, on the screen, because there's so much information in here that isn't that
ton.
you just.
You yourself, and not to call you, but you yourself stood up and said we don't see this.
Right.
Well, now we do. It's almost too much. So no, I don't think there's any organizational or sort of structural process changes, because I think we've been making them. I mean, there are ways of small little tweaks here and there. This year, before we actually voted on our budget, we went back to the select board and said, okay, this is sort of what we're thinking. Are there any changes you'd like based upon your own priorities? Gave them that opportunity. They chose not to take it, but at least that we weren't just sort of locking in and making priorities for them. Because it is important. They are the executives of the town, so make sure that they have afforded the opportunity to prioritize things.
Okay. All right, well, you're right at the 2-minute mark, so you now have your time just to make whatever pitch you have as to why people should vote for you for Finance Committee.
Well, thank you, Mary, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be here today and get to speak to the residents of Holliston. We live in a great town, we really do, and we have great people, volunteers, our parks, our schools, and of course the rail trail. And I want to ensure that we continue to see all of these different people and thrive in town. I mean, that it's not necessarily the Finance Committee's job, but that we're definitely an integral part of it. In my time on the Finance Committee, I've helped take steps to drive 2 ratings increases to our credit rating, and we're now at AAA, which is the highest credit rating possible. We've done this through a group effort, tons of different people involved, assessors, of course, and in the future, this will be very important and save the town and the taxpayers a lot of money, because if we do choose to do one of those big projects, will save a tremendous amount on interest expense. And so that's really important. And we've done this by making prudent decisions and, investing, but all the while still investing in the town's needs. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we've spent $17 million over the last 5 years on our water infrastructure. We've needed water infrastructure improvement tremendously. And when the water treatment plant on Well 5 comes on later this year, people will see a significant improvement in their water quality. I think people are still haven't fully understood this, but that'll be huge. Since I've joined the Finance Committee over the last 10 years, we've increased our investment in our schools by 50% per year. That is extraordinary and really shows that the community is behind the schools. And look, I have 2 school-aged children. I want nothing more than for the schools to be successful and to invest, significantly in them. We've also funded the sustainability coordinator position and the facilities manager position, so that the town isn't behind on our environmental and sustainability goals and impact, while we're also maintaining our buildings and other assets. Since I've been on the Finance Committee, my guiding principle has been to try to make recommendations to town meeting that I believe will propel the town forward into the future. And this isn't always easy. I don't always get it right. I've made some mistakes, but I think in the end, on the whole, I've done a good job. And so I hope to be able to use this experience and my track record of success to help generate creative and inventive solutions for the town. And I humbly ask for your vote on May 24th.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Mary.
All right, we'll see you around Town Hall,
I'm
wherever,
sure.
the auditorium, or wherever. Thank you for watching Just Thinking. You've done your homework, so please remember to vote on May 24th. It's important for you, your family, and the community. Thank you.